The rain was pouring down, hammering against the cold glass of the terminal windows, and there I stood, completely alone. My hands were shaking as I clutched my worn leather purse, looking at the empty tarmac, realizing my own flesh and blood had left me behind. They took my boarding pass. They took my luggage. And they took my dignity. Richard, my own son, had looked me in the eye and told me to wait by the gate. But he never intended to return. None of them did. They thought they had finally gotten rid of the old woman. They thought the farm was theirs for the taking. But they forgot one crucial thing. 40 years ago, before I became just a quiet grandma, I built the very foundation this town stands on. And their reckoning was about to begin. For 40 long years, the Whispering Pines farm was my sanctuary, the place where my late husband and I poured our blood, sweat, and tears into the earth. When Arthur passed away, a deep silence settled over the fields, and the farmhouse felt far too large for one person. I spent my days baking, tending to the orchards, and waiting for the phone to ring. I was just a gentle, quiet old woman to them. A grandmother who always had a warm plate of cookies and a soft smile. My son, Richard, and his ambitious, cold-eyed wife, Evelyn, treated me like an ancient piece of furniture. They looked right through me, as if my age had rendered me invisible, as if my mind had faded along with the color in my hair. I gave them everything they ever asked for, and more. When Richard wanted to start his real estate firm, I dipped into my savings without a single second thought. When my granddaughter, Chloe, needed her college tuition paid, I signed the checks with a joyful heart. I lived simply, wearing my faded cardigans, driving my battered old station wagon, and letting them believe that the farm was the only thing I had left in this world. They assumed I was fragile, uneducated in the ways of modern business, a simple-minded countrywoman who could be easily managed. They would visit on Sundays, but not to check on my health. Oh no, their eyes would wander across the rolling hills, calculating the acreage, estimating the value of the timber, whispering in the hallways when they thought I couldn't hear. Evelyn would drop backhanded compliments about how quaint my life was, while dropping hints about how much easier it would be if I moved into a managed care facility. I smiled through the heartache, choosing to believe the best in my own family, because the alternative was too painful to bear. I loved them fiercely, blind to the venom that was slowly festering underneath their polite smiles. I thought that by pouring endless love, patience, and financial support into their lives, I was securing a peaceful twilight for myself, surrounded by the people I cherished. How utterly, heartbreakingly wrong I was. The whispers turned into hushed, frantic meetings in my own living room whenever I stepped out to brew tea. They didn't realize that while my bones were stiff, my hearing was perfectly sharp. It started 3 months ago. A sequence of strange events that left me feeling deeply uneasy. Richard began bringing stacks of official-looking documents to the house, always sandwiching them between benign papers, asking me to just sign here, Mom, for the insurance, for the taxes. They thought I was distracted, too old to read the fine print, too trusting to question my own son. One evening, I stood near the kitchen doorway, holding a tray of porcelain cups, when I heard Evelyn's sharp, calculated voice slicing through the quiet evening air. If we get her out of the country, just for a few weeks, the power of attorney takes effect, she hissed, her tone dripping with greed. The developers in the city are offering $4 million for the Eastern Ridge alone. Richard, we can finally buy the estate in the hills. We can finally live the life we deserve. Richard hesitated, but only for a fraction of a second. She'll be safe in that senior community in Costa Rica, he murmured, his voice devoid of any warmth. It's for her own good. She can't manage this place anymore anyway. She's just an anchor dragging us down. My heart shattered. Right there in that dim hallway, the betrayal was a physical blow, knocking the wind right out of my chest. They weren't planning a beautiful vacation for my 75th birthday, as they had proudly announced the week before. It was a trap, a carefully orchestrated plot to exile me, to cast me away like garbage so they could strip the land my husband and I had bled for. They viewed me as a weak, helpless old widow, an obstacle standing between them and a mountain of cash. They began selling off pieces of my life behind my back, listing my antique furniture online, contacting auctioneers to clear out the barn. They believed I was completely penniless without the farm, entirely dependent on their meager charity. They had no idea, absolutely no inkling of the true depths of the woman they were trying to destroy. The day of departure arrived, a gloomy, overcast morning that mirrored the dread pooling in my stomach. Richard and Evelyn escorted me to the international airport, their faces masks of forced, sickening cheerfulness. They hurried me through the bustling terminal, pushing my wheelchair with an unnecessary, aggressive speed. When we reached a secluded seating area near an abandoned gate, Richard stopped. He took my small carry-on bag, my passport, and the boarding passes. "Wait right here, Mom," he said, his voice flat, refusing to meet my eyes. "Evelyn and I need to go settle a discrepancy with the baggage agent. We'll be right back." I watched their retreating backs, my chest tightening with a terrible, agonizing certainty. 1 hour passed. Then 2. The terminal grew quiet. The announcements echoed hollowly against the high ceilings. I pulled my old flip phone from my pocket, my fingers trembling, and dialed Richard's number. It went straight to voicemail. I dialed Evelyn. Nothing. Finally, a text message chimed on my screen. A cold, brutal message from my daughter-in-law that read, "Don't try to come back, Margaret. The farm is sold. Your belongings are in storage. Your flight to the care facility leaves at midnight. It's over." I sat there, completely blindsided, publicly abandoned in a crowded airport, exposed to the pitying stares of passing strangers. Tears burned my eyes, hot and shameful, as the sheer weight of their cruelty washed over me. They wanted to humiliate me, to break my spirit entirely so I wouldn't fight back. They thought I would crawl onto that plane, defeated, heartbroken, and disappear into the tropical sunset. But as I sat in that plastic airport chair, something shifted deep inside my soul. The sorrow, the crushing grief of betrayal, hardened into something else entirely. It became a cold, razor-sharp anger. They thought I was a helpless victim, a weak old lady with nowhere to turn. They forgot who I was before I became a mother. They forgot that I was the founding partner of Vance and Associates, one of the most powerful corporate law firms in the state. They thought I was poor, but they were about to find out exactly how much power I truly held. I didn't board that flight. Instead, I called a private car service, using a platinum account my family had never known existed. 2 weeks later, the trap was set. Richard and Evelyn had forcefully assumed control of the farm, and today was the day they were to finalize the deed transfer to the city developers in a formal court hearing. They walked into the courtroom smiling, radiant with unearned arrogance, holding hands as if they had won the lottery. But their smiles withered instantly, frozen in horror, when they saw me sitting at the front table, flanked by 3 of the most formidable, high-priced litigation attorneys in the entire country. "Mom," Richard stammered, his face turning a sickly shade of pale gray. What are you doing here? You're supposed to be." The Honorable Judge Harrison slammed his gavel down, demanding silence. My lead attorney stood up, his voice echoing like thunder in the quiet room. He presented the court with a mountain of evidence, forensic accounting records, secret audio tapes of their plotting, and a revoked power of attorney that I had quietly filed weeks before their betrayal. But the final, crushing blow was yet to come. I stood up, pulling myself to my full height, discarding my old faded cardigan for a tailored, designer suit they had never seen me wear. I looked at my son, my eyes colder than ice. "You thought you could steal my farm, Richard, because you thought I was broke, because you thought I was weak," I said, my voice steady, reverberating with an authority that made him flinch. "What you never bothered to learn, because you were too consumed by greed, is that I don't just own the farm. I own the investment firm that holds the mortgage on your business, I own the development company you are trying to sell my land to, and I own the very roof over your heads." The courtroom was dead silent. Evelyn looked as though she might faint, her gasps loud in the stillness. The judge looked down at them with absolute, utter disgust. "Based on the evidence of fraud, elder abuse, and illegal grand larceny," Judge Harrison announced, his voice dripping with contempt, "I am freezing all assets belonging to Richard and Evelyn Vance, voiding all unauthorized contracts, and ordering an immediate criminal investigation." I watched, with a calm, detached satisfaction, as county deputies stepped forward, clicking handcuffs around my sons and daughter-in-law's wrists. They had sought to humiliate me, to strip me of everything, but instead, they had completely, irrevocably destroyed themselves. The aftermath was swift and uncompromising. Richard and Evelyn lost absolutely everything. Their business collapsed into bankruptcy within a month. Their luxury cars were repossessed, and they now face years in a federal penitentiary for financial fraud and elder exploitation. My granddaughter, Chloe, who had joined in their mockery, found her trust fund completely dissolved, forced to work 2 jobs just to pay off the tuition I used to cover out of love. They are entirely ruined, exposed to the world as the parasitic, heartless thieves they truly are. As for me, I returned to the Whispering Pines farm. The air is clear out here. The morning sun still warms the front porch, and the silence is no longer lonely. It is peaceful. I sit in my favorite rocking chair, sipping tea, knowing that justice has been served. To anyone watching this, remember this vital truth: never mistake a person's kindness for weakness. Age does not diminish a person's worth, nor does a quiet spirit mean a lack of strength. True rank, true power, is not found in arrogance or greed. It is found in dignity, integrity, and the courage to stand tall when the storm rages. They tried to bury me, but they forgot. I was a seed,